Hi, Y Scholars. Welcome to week 26, communicating effectively with others. To begin, we'll go over our vision and mission. So again, our vision is to elevate people's growth mindset so we all achieve higher ambitions. And our mission is to guide first-gen high school students so they pursue and obtain a college education. Moving forward, we're just going to review our study group purposes. So they're 1, to increase our connections with other Y Scholars, 2, improve your student success skills, and last but not least, guide you to practice your growth mindset. So really trying to kind of absorb and digest what we talk about during study group and try to apply it to your own life, again, to foster that improvement and growth. So we'll do a quick recap of what we discussed last week. Last week, we talked a lot about boundaries. So boundaries are these limits that we set for ourselves, and they, again, arise or are important to really take care of our space, to communicate our limits, and again, make sure that we are able to function and be ourselves and have that emotional capacity to support ourselves. Moving forward, our boundaries can take and be applied to different areas of our lives. So again, we could set boundaries for our personal space, our emotion and thoughts, our stuff, our possessions, our time and energy, our cultural, religion, ethics. So again, we have the opportunity to make boundaries for any aspect of our life. And the reason why we make boundaries is because they have those kind of incentives. So some of those kind of incentives to boundary setting can be that you improve your relationship with others and your own self-esteem, because again, you're getting that respect that you feel is necessary, and again, that you do deserve, and you're trying to, again, have the opportunity to grow and expand your relationships, and that, again, you can communicate effectively and feel comfortable, again, engaging in this relationship because your boundaries are respected. And your boundaries can be flexible because, again, we change and adapt to different scenarios all throughout our life. So again, boundaries are not a permanent limit we have for ourselves. And again, it has the opportunity to change and adapt as much as we do. They allow us to conserve our emotional energy because, again, when we set those boundaries, it's to make sure that our space is being protected. And they give us a space to grow and be vulnerable. So again, when we're establishing these boundaries, we want to make sure that we're doing so and kind of leaning more towards being vulnerable versus oversharing. So again, that difference is that vulnerability is more of a two-way street. It requires that you have that trust and comfort to communicate, while oversharing is more of a manipulative doing that, again, you're trying and only focused on one side of the story. And again, this isn't what we want to do. We want to make sure that the relationship, again, as a relationship should be, is two-way, and both sides of the party are being considered, and you have that trust fostered. So where to draw the line? Our boundaries are a deeply personal choice, and again, they arise from thinking about our needs. So again, when we know that we have to draw the line, it's that maybe our needs aren't being met, or maybe, again, we feel that it's time to speak up. So this is, again, a personal choice that we have to make when it's important. Again, to protect our space, we want to go ahead and draw that line, communicate those boundaries, and make sure that, again, we are being respected. So again, to start off, we want to make sure we're well aware of what rights we have. So we have different rights, and some of them include that you have the right to say no without feeling guilty. You have a right to make your needs as important as others. So again, not to downsize your own feelings or kind of experiences, and by comparing to others and feeling that maybe it's not as equitable. Because again, you have the right to make yourself a priority. You have, again, a right to be accepting of your mistakes and failures. You have a right not to meet other people's unreasonable expectations of yourself. So again, these are different examples of the rights that you have or can have. And this is how we could go about establishing boundaries. Again, being familiar with the rights we have for ourselves. So again, when we know it's time for us to really draw that line, it usually comes to us because again, we have that intuition to know when something's not going our way. So it's important to really follow our gut when it comes to boundary setting, and again, determining our values. That way we know that our values are protected, and if not, it's time for us again to reinforce those boundaries through communication. So again, our boundaries are shaped by different parts of our life, including our heritage, the region we live in, our personality, so whether we're introverted, extroverted, whatnot, our life experiences, and our family dynamics. So again, this is why it's so important that we're communicating our boundaries, because we all come from different settings, different backgrounds, and their boundaries are going to vary. So in order to make sure that we're all on the same page, we need to really reinforce those boundaries and communicate them and do so effectively. So when we want to create our boundaries, we want to be assertive. So we want to make those I statements. We want to learn to say no, because again, we have the right to say no without feeling guilty. We want to safeguard our space, make sure that again, we're being respected, our limits are being considered and acknowledged, and being kind of again, really familiar in that setting that you put yourself out with. So again, you want to make sure that everyone's aware of your your boundaries, and they're familiar with what they mean to you. And again, boundary setting can be hard, which is why it is important that you get that support if you feel that it's necessary. Again, just so you have that space and opportunity to communicate your boundaries without being intimidated. So another quick recap, we talked about I statements and feeling statements. So I statements are you taking that responsibility of how you feel, think, and need, because again, you are most accurate in describing these, because you are the one that are, again, feeling these emotions. You're the one that is most familiar with yourself, which is why it's important that you speak for yourself. And I statements consist of 3 parts. So one, identifying that specific feeling, associating it with that particular event when it occurs, and explaining how the two are correlated. So again, you want to explain that inside feeling or emotion, and then describe that person's action or behavior that influenced your feeling. So this is feeling statements. And what we want to make sure to avoid are those non-feeling statements. So again, us trying to interpret how others feel are non-feeling statements, and that's not something that we want to lean towards to. Instead, we want to speak for ourselves. So use feeling statements. So example of non-feeling statements would be, I feel she hates me. I feel you don't like me. So again, this is not explaining how you feel, but you're trying to interpret how the other person is feeling, which again isn't as effective because you can't necessarily always communicate for others. Maybe you misinterpreted. So then if you want to be more assertive, you speak for yourself and you use feeling statements, and that could come in the form of, I feel sad when I don't receive that scholarship. I feel anxious about talking to this teacher. So again, you're really trying to explain how you feel, think, or act. And again, you speak for yourself, not for others. So in order to really communicate those boundaries, you also want to make sure that you're offering that solution or resolution to the situation. So you're making a request in return. That way the other person is clear on how they could respond to really respect those boundaries. So again, we want to use I statements followed by a request. What I'd like for you now to do is to work in your YSP journal to go ahead and make an I statement for the following issues. So I would like for you all to put yourself in these scenarios. So the first one is, one of your good friends did not come to your birthday, even though they said they were coming. When you asked what happened, they simply said, I got busy. This is the 4th time that they did not show up for a dinner, event, or outing. And each time there's a different excuse. So first, try to identify what it is that you feel. How would you respond, or how do you feel like you'd react to being stood up constantly by someone that you truly value? And again, someone that you feel you're close to. Once you identify that feeling, why is it that you feel that way? And next, what can you kind of suggest or request from the other person to make sure that, again, your emotional energy is not being exhausted in that scenario? Once you're done with that, go ahead and move to the second statement. So also make an I statement followed by a request. So the second scenario is, your coworker has been taking long breaks for the past 3 weeks during busy times at the restaurant. You end up doing all of the work during these chaotic times. So how would you respond? What do you feel? And again, why is it that you feel that way? What could you request from your coworker to ensure that, again, your rights are being respected, as well as your time and energy? So go ahead and enter that in your YSP journal. And once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and move on. So this week, as mentioned before, is communicating effectively with others. So our session will be successful if we learn how to express ourselves to people with positions of authority, and we learn ways to improve our interpersonal communication skills. So another prompt that I'd like for you to answer in your YSP journal is, how confident are you in addressing your concerns to someone in a position of authority and power? Do you feel that it's easy for you to talk to those that are higher above or have a higher standing? Or are you more comfortable talking to people that have a similar experience to you, a similar title, a similar standing? So go ahead and also answer this question in your YSP journal. So again, as we reflect on this, we see that typically when we're talking to those of higher authority, it's a bit intimidating, but we need to learn to get over our fear by focusing on that positive outcome. When you speak for yourself, again, there's an incentive to it, which is why it's important that you try to work to communicate effectively with people of authority. And the way you could do this is trying to focus on that win-win for both sides. So again, typically, it's more than likely that we could get people to work with us when we offer a solution and also some type of benefit to them. So again, when we want to speak for ourselves, we want to also encourage the others to do so by having them realize that their support also means a win for them. So in order to kind of begin this process, we want to make sure that we're doing our homework and we're coming prepared. So when we're ready to engage with people of authority, we want to be well familiar with what we need, what resources are going to benefit this conversation. So this could take the form of, one, researching what the other person has done beforehand. So again, being more familiar with that person of authority, knowing their role and what they've written or what they're known for. So again, familiarizing yourself with who this person is will better situate yourself on how to kind of gauge this conversation. So again, you want to be able to also use this to your benefit by acknowledging and kind of respecting that title that they have. So again, we also want to make sure that we're being proactive. So we're the facilitator for success. So it's up to us to really work to our own benefit, to be prepared and make sure we're doing what is needed for us to succeed in this conversation. So being proactive could be through taking responsibility. So what is your part? What can you do in that situation that you're addressing? Again, hold yourself accountable. When we are working on these relationships, again, we have that responsibility to ourselves and to the other person. And also, being proactive means that you're strategically offering alternative solutions. So again, you're addressing a situation that may be occurring, but also giving some support by offering a solution to it. So again, you're being proactive in that you're prepared and are able to suggest ways the other person can help. So moving forward, it's important that we're strategic on those words you use. So when you hear someone say the word but in response to you, what's your reaction? So again, knowing when and how to use the words and or but during a conversation, especially during an argument, is important. So again, when we first hear the word but, we get the sense that there's some sort of a catch to the situation. And typically we get a bit defensive. So if we hear someone respond with, hi, like, I think your drawing is really nice, but maybe you should have used the color red. So again, when we hear but, we tend to get defensive because we know that maybe some criticism is going to follow, or we know that again, after that word but, typically it's going to juxtapose that initial statement. So kind of counteract that compliment they might have given. So another example of this is here. So when we're maybe in a situation where we're in a group project and someone says, I think that's a good idea, but this is not going to work. So the listener is obviously going to become defensive and say, so do you have a better idea? So again, it's quick for us to really be defensive when we feel that our own kind of ideas are not being respected, or again, we feel that maybe they're not enough. So again, what are ways we could modify this? What we could do is change that word but and instead replace it with and. So offer that resolution and not completely shut down the other person's proposal. So this could take the form of, I think that's a good idea, and I would like to take some time to work with you to develop that idea. What do you think about that? So again, by using the word and, it creates a different scenario in that you're not shutting down the other person's idea, whether or not you think it's good or bad, but instead you're offering support to really grow and expand that idea. And you're going to do so collectively. So that's a better way to communicate instead of, again, using the word but and having the other person become defensive. So again, we need to know and be conscious of the words we're using and the response it can evoke. So again, we want to try to use the word and instead of but in order to be proactive and offer that alternate solution. So a following activity you'll be doing is using and. So what you're going to do are make statements in response to these three scenarios here. So in your YSP journal, go ahead and make an and statement for each. So the first scenario is your friend proposed to meet for lunch on a day that doesn't work for you. What can you do or say to ensure that this friendship is long lasting and continues on despite your inability to meet at this time? The second scenario is one of your parents wants you to help clean around the house. You also have work to do. How could you talk to your parents to ensure that one, you could prioritize your work, but also acknowledge that they need your help and again, that you're willing to help them? The third scenario is your boss is requesting to work 2 extra shifts. However, you want to reduce some of the work hours so you can focus on your finals. Your finals are during the busiest time of the week. So how would you talk to your boss to ensure that one, you're still employed despite not being able to meet or work these 2 extra shifts, but also get him to understand that you're not doing so because it's not something you want to do, but necessarily you don't have the time because of your academics. So again, go ahead and respond by making and statements for each of these 3 scenarios in your YSP journal. So make sure again that you're being proactive, you're the facilitator for success. And again, this being proactive means taking responsibility, holding yourself accountable, and offering alternate solutions. Thank you for joining study group, and I'll see you next week.